Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to our next panel discussion, and this is brought to you by Silverlake. Artificial intelligence is transforming Islamic finance by enhancing efficiency, ensuring ethical compliance, and driving innovation. By leveraging AI tools like machine learning and predictive analytics, the industry can build a more transparent, resilient, and inclusive financial ecosystem. Our next panelist will deep dive into a discussion on revolutionizing Islamic finance, transformative role of artificial intelligence. We shall now invite the discussion on the stage. First, Ms. Chris Skinner, Global FinTech Leader and CEO of The Financer. Please welcome Mr. Sami Aftab Mian, CEO, BladeLabs. Dr. Qasim Nassar-Ullah, Director, Arabesque Singapore Private Limited, and Mr. Peng, President, AI Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to invite Mr. Suhaimi Ali, Assistant Governor, Bank Negara Malaysia, as the moderator for this session. Please welcome. Delegates, for Q&A session, you may submit your related question to the panelists via QR code on slido.com, which will be displayed later on the screen. And upon log on, please choose session 4 to project your questions. Eji Suhaimi, over to you.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And it's good to see a full auditorium early morning on Tuesday. And our session today is actually an important session, and this is a topical topic that everyone is struggling with, trying to learn a bit more, and this is on AI. And our session today will look at questions that is both timely and inevitable in our day-to-day work. How will artificial intelligence reshape Islamic finance? And for centuries, our industry has drawn strength from principle of fairness, trust, and shared prosperity. Those values remain constant. What is changing is the speed and scale of innovation around us. So AI today is no longer about just efficiency. It is redefining how we serve customers, assess risks, prevent misconduct, and extend financial access to communities typically left behind. And for Islamic finance, this presents both an extraordinary opportunity and profound responsibility to ensure that technology deepens our commitments rather than dilute them. So over the next 1.5 hours, we will explore how AI can move us from tradition to tomorrow, enabling new business models, enhancing transparency, and empowering communities in ways that stay true to Sharia values. Now, in Malaysia, based on our survey last year, the key use cases for AI by the financial sector include customer analytics and marketing, internal operations improvements, cyber risk management, and fraud AML use cases. So these are the main use cases for the Malaysian financial sector so far. So that's not too advanced, but we are starting quite strong on those areas. Now, who are better at this to share their expertise other than the 4 panelists that we have today with us? I would like to introduce them one by one. On my far left is Mr. Chris Skinner, Global FinTech Leader and CEO of The Financer UK. He is an award-winning speaker and one of the most influential individuals in technology, who is involved in founding the first mobile bank in the world and acts as advisor to global CEOs and leaders, UN and the World Bank. We also have Mr. Sami, CEO of BladeLabs Qatar. He has 20 plus years of experience in global financial markets, blockchain innovation, and Islamic finance. Next to Sami is Mr. Qasim Nassar-Ullah, Director of Arabesque, co-founder and senior AI engineer at Arabesque, currently based in Singapore and leading an AI and data analytics program. So I'm sure we can actually gain a lot of knowledge from him. And last but not least is Mr. Peng, founder and group executive chairman, Silverlake Group, and thank you for sponsoring this session as well. And as you all know, Silverlake is a fintech giant providing core banking software to some of Asia's largest financial institutions. So the way we're going to do this session this morning, there'll be 3 rounds of questions. The first round, we will talk about what are some of the AI use cases currently, the state of AI in Islamic finance, and its value proposition that AI brings to Islamic finance. The second round of our conversation, we'll talk about what are the key considerations in AI adoptions, especially from the ethical and governance perspectives. How do we scale adoption, and what could potentially be the unintended consequences of AI adoption? The third round, we'll talk about how AI can revolutionize, I have problems saying this word, revolutionize Islamic finance, and what are the roles of key stakeholders when it comes to advancing AI in our ecosystem. Then we will follow with the Q&A session. And without further ado, let me then just start with the first round. And this question is actually to everyone, but I'll start with Mr. Skinner. The current common AI use cases, as I mentioned earlier, there are several that are being adopted, such as credit scoring based on machine learning, transaction monitoring for fraud and money laundering, use of electronic identity verification, EKYC. So in what ways do you see AI further strengthening Islamic finance ecosystem, whether it is in the product innovation, risk management, customer experience, and what's your thoughts on that, in which areas AI can help?
I'll make an apology to begin with, because I'll probably talk for quite a while. Apologies. But context first, I think, which is when you look at technology in the financial system, we've got to the third phase of technology revolutionizing the financial system. The first phase was back in the 1960s and 70s when mainframe computing became mainstream, and most of what we were doing was automating processes to get rid of overhead, and it was automating the mundane with a mainframe. And the second major development revolution came in the 2000s when we moved into cloud computing and the internet and the network of things, and digital became core. And the difference between the first and the second is, in the first phase, we automated the mundane but left everything as it was in terms of physical structures. In the second phase, we had to move into digital transformation and put digital at the base of the company, at the foundation, and anything physical was sitting on top. And a lot of people are still doing that process. And my message today is, if you're still doing that process of digital transformation, then you're pretty much dead. You should have done it last decade, because we're now moving into the third phase, which is the intelligence revolution. And the intelligence revolution is no longer saying digital is at the core, it's data is at the core. And how you can leverage that knowledge into wisdom about your customer relationships and your engagement with people and with corporations. And when we talk about AI, it bugs me a little bit, because it's a little bit like cloud computing. We talk about it as this big bucket, whereas actually It's the specifics within the bucket that are the most important things we need to focus upon. And a lot of people talk about chatbots in customer engagement or using AI in fraud and compliance and risk. And there are many companies that do those areas very well. There are very specific applications of artificial intelligence, but it's moving at a very fast pace and it's hard to keep up with the speed of change. There's a survey I saw the other day from one of the big consulting groups saying that most companies, over 2/3, are struggling to keep up with the pace of technology developments. And it's not surprising because when we look at all the things we talk about today, from blockchain to digital identity to artificial intelligence, there's huge developments taking place at speed that are very hard to keep up with. But the gist of where I come from is you should have done the data transformation in the last decade when you were doing digital. And where we are today is to leverage that data to be intelligent in everything that you do. And I can see intelligence in a lot of companies, but my two favorite examples are one from the UK, which is Monzo, and one from China, which is Alipay. And from Monzo, they do a really interesting thing, which is they look at every single thing that you're doing in your accounts, transactions, and they analyze that using intelligence to realize that maybe sometimes you're not being as clever as you should be. And the example that I give is you get on the subway every single day and you pay to get on the subway every single day. Why aren't you using a season ticket? And the answer for most people is, I can't afford to buy a season ticket. So they prompt you and say, we see you using the subway every day. Would you like a season ticket? Swipe, and you've got one. It's actually a loan, but instead it's intelligent about the customer's lifestyle digitally. And with Alipay, they do an awful lot of that stuff. But what I really like about the way in which they use artificial intelligence is when I went to their offices in Hangzhou, they had this amazing screen, which was the size of this room, near enough, the size of that screen behind me, that showed every single transaction taking place amongst every single Alipay user across China and the world. And it was a red, amber, and green system. And red obviously was flagging what were risk or fraudulent potential transactions. And immediately, anybody in the company can drill down and see what those transactions were. And that's something that they invested very heavily in building as intelligence 8 years ago. They've moved on from that today because they're now looking at over 2 billion users around the world doing transactions every second that will amount to over 2 million transactions a second. And for me, that's incredible, but specifically it's incredible because you have to have intelligence in that system to make sure it's resilient, robust, and secure, and stable. So the intelligent financial system that we're developing today is based on all the stuff that's gone before, from mainframes to cloud computing and the network, into something that's data-centric, personalized one-to-one. So I will know everything about you, and you'll know everything about me. Sounds a bit scary.
So I think you provided an excellent context and overview of the evolution of technology and AI. So I guess for Sami and Qasim, maybe if you can actually deep dive into what is the state of the AI adoption in Islamic finance, what are the use cases that you are seeing, I guess what kind of value prop that it brings?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for the invitation. First of all, a wonderful conference. So we're a technology company, and AI is one of the tools that we use in combination with other technologies. Blockchain smart contracts are good in certain things. We have traditional databases that we use that are good at certain things. And AI is good at certain things, but at the same time, not so reliable in other things. So if you were to kind of separate the use cases into 3 buckets, you mentioned some of them. There are existing processes that you can add AI into that makes the processes much more efficient, right? KYC, there might be a traditional process that's running KYC. Before humans were doing it, now there's some traditional process. You put AI to it, and then you could do it much more efficiently. So it might save some cost. Then there's the next bucket, which is, I would call AI-enabled products. So products that are actually built from the ground up using AI. We have built products such as Mudaraba, so AI-enabled Mudaraba. This involves multiple workflows. So you can kind of think of KYC as one specific thing. You can think of a Mudaraba product as AI workflows, where it involves multiple AI processes to coordinate, pass data around, and then produce an outcome. Now that, after that, is then fed into other systems, like blockchain or traditional databases, right? The third category, which I think has the most, I would say, potential, is an AI platform that can create AI products. Because in Islamic finance, there are many workflows. There's Mudaraba, there's Musharaka, there might be Murabaha. These are all what we call workflows. They involve coordination with a law firm, with Sharia advisors, with the regulators, with the customer. So these products, if you actually build an AI platform, you can potentially provide a product that is suited for Malaysia, for a specific religious interpretation, and based on a certain customer preference. So that, I think, is the most powerful implementation of AI.
Thank you. Qasim?
Assalamu alaikum. Chris, I liked your mention of mainframe computers. So my dad was one of an early mainframe engineer, and he told me, I don't know if it's true or not, but yeah, very quickly we saw personal computers really take over. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we're definitely going to see, I mean, even before that, a big seismic shift in terms of the way we're using compute. Going back to your question, in terms of what are the use cases? Is it KYC, credit scoring? Before I answer that, to me, AI is almost becoming like a utility. And what I mean is that right now, like a good proxy for economic development is how much energy we consume per head. Can we do something similar with AI in the future? Will we be measuring AI usage per head? And we're already doing that to an extent. So a lot of the LLMs that we use, we have to be careful in terms of how much of it we're using. So for example, one of Google's previous video models cost around 50 cents per minute. So a 10-minute video, you're looking at $5, and that prices out, the majority of the world's population, and that's just for one video. I mean, you probably want to iterate, you probably want to create a few. So I think, yeah, AI is becoming, in my view, it could become like a utility, and that will of course entail many people getting involved: the government, the regulators, the industry. So I just wanted to share that. In terms of what are the use cases in fintech, to me, the last 1-2 years, we've seen a big growth in the customer UX. So fundamentally, ChatGPT, when it came out, it is a customer user experience product. And I don't know how many people in the audience have used AI, but people really like using it. The AI is very good at you writing something and it communicating back to you. The 2 fastest companies to 100 million ARR One is Cursor, which is a coding platform. So you effectively tell the model what you'd like, and it then generates code for you. The code might not be correct, so you do have to check that. And there's smart things that the AI can do, like for example, it can create tests, and it can integrate with other systems. So that's one product, and then you have Lovable, which you don't even need to know any coding whatsoever. You can literally, describe what you want, and it will build a working app for you. And people really, it's called a Lovable, and people really like these tools. So I think, yeah, I see UX as being the big thing. In terms of one really important thing is that AI, you can't use it uncontrollably. The AI makes mistakes. The AI can't count, right? And so, in early models, people used to ridicule AI models. It couldn't tell you what's bigger. It couldn't do basic arithmetic. So you need to use something else. Whether that be like blockchain or controllers, or using it by itself is not enough. So for a calculator, what the latest models do is that they will literally effectively build a small script which does the calculation for it, because it doesn't know how to do it. So it will literally go into a calculator, type 2 + 2, and give you the answer, because that's the only way it knows how to get the answer correct. And the final thing I want to say is that, look, what is AI? What are the use cases? This is constantly evolving, And so back in 2014, when we started Life, we were talking about quant, Sharia, ESG. In 2015, we've been in, we launched the first Sharia funds in Malaysia, and it was a journey. And then I think in 2018, we invested in AI and built Arabesque AI, and so a lot of our work is kind of pre-LLM, and LLM is now taking over, and that's a great thing. And even before, Professor Dara was speaking to me yesterday, that it's a long journey, even since 2010. So these are just definitions, and so they will just change over time.
Thanks. So I'm going to ask a slightly different question to Mr. Goh. Your company supports many banks, throughout the region. So what are some of the then key success factors that you see in different jurisdictions or different markets in terms of the adoption of AI? Anything that you could share from your observation? I know in the holding room just now, we had a very lively conversation among the panelists. So maybe, you can share some of your observation.
Yeah, I'll continue from every one of them. Actually, every one of them touch a bit about our history, and especially Greece. Actually, I started in 1987, wrote something called Mathematical Intelligence in IBM. And of course, mathematical intelligence covers artificial intelligence. Now, whether it is Islamic banking, or whether it is artificial intelligence, whether it's mathematical intelligence, all this actually are holistic. If you look at the evolution of Islam, Islamic banking actually is much longer than conventional banking. It's, Mudarabah actually started way before 680, actually it's before 680. And conventional banking started 1494 by Luca Porcioli. Now, so in that paper, I say garbage in, garbage out. If you have the data problems, which is what Chris said, garbage in, garbage out. Now, today, it is even worse. For example, if you need 5 pieces of information to get one use case, and you ended up using 20, then your AI power multiplied by 100. So the first one was 500, the other one is 10,000. Now that is actually a very serious problem today. Now you must understand, AI tends to multiply the complexity first before it gets to the conclusion. So first problem is data, garbage in, garbage out. Now the good news is we have been operating in ASEAN, and I'm giving you an example of Mandiri Bank. Mandiri Bank is now trying to process 100 million transactions in 4 hours. And that, you can imagine the data, and if you multiply with the AI multiplier, you are going to be in big trouble. No processor can process Mandiri. Now, there are my customers who have experimented using LLM, and they only can process around 3,000 transactions. And so there are a lot of these problems. So now, first, garbage in, garbage out. Remember, solve that problem first, otherwise you're going to pay 20 times more money doing the same thing, or maybe 100 times, because garbage can be really big garbage, okay? Now, so that is problem number one, which is obvious. Now, the second thing, now in Islam, whether it's about products, whether it's about Islamic principle, you have muamalat. I mean, as far as banking and finance is concerned, it's about muamalat principles. Now, why you need principles is to make sure no garbage in, garbage out, right? Principles are principles, right? As long as you follow the principle, it's not definitely garbage, not garbage. That's the reason why the evolution of Islamic banking lasted so many years. And a lot of people never ask why it lasts more than 1,000 years. Nobody asked that question because it's principle-based. Now, the second thing is, when I come to Chris again, so in the year 2000, we talk about cloud. Now, in Islam, it's called sunnah, the pathway. Now, in mathematics, it's called Yoneda Kedi pathways. Now, if I'm wrong, please correct me. I'm not Muslim, okay? Okay, so if I'm wrong, please correct me. Now, and so it's expected, actually, if you evolve for thousands of years, you would expect that there's something called sunnah. And in mathematics, of course, when you calculate, you of course, will discover Yoneda and Keli, which is common sense. It will happen. Now, that one is about cloud, is about staging, is about integration, is about orchestration, is about harmonization. There are so many things about that pathway. And I believe if you, as a Muslim, you will understand what I mean. Actually, there are a lot of meaning about sunnah, and therefore I don't need to add. In fact, it makes my life very easy to explain. Otherwise, it's so difficult to explain what is pathway. And we have that equivalent called, actually we call it CGW. Now, so that actually is, we introduced that, of course, around 6-7 years ago. Of course, it takes the bank a while to accept it because they really don't understand AI is coming. Now, finally, we go to the world of AI. Now, AI, of course, is about activities, is about human activities. It's called human actions. Now, there was a very famous scholar that we call it Austrian School. Now, there's Louis von Mises, who wrote a thick a book on human action, but it doesn't matter. We know what is human action, and in business, we call that use cases, we call that application, but it's good that we separate out whether it's application or whatever, you have the use case side, and you have the principle side, because you have to go back to the muamalat, because you have to follow the principle. So there is a principle side, there is a use case side, there is a UI UX side. So you find that if you look at the banking application around Silverlake, core banking, a lot of banks has 400, 500, maybe some 600 Microsoft or whatever sub servers. You go to the computer room, you see one Silverlake, you got whole bunch of friends in the whole room. We have only one in the room, and you have 400-500 servers around us. And that is what the true bank is It looks like now. Doesn't matter whether UOB Singapore, Maybank, whether it's a public bank, whether it's Mandiri Bank. That is a real picture. If you go in, you see one big one and hundreds of small one. Okay, now, what is AI? AI is trying to remove the hundreds of small one. Common sense, right? Why? Do you know how much it costs to maintain these hundreds of servers? You need hundreds of IT experts. You need application experts. You need computer experts. You need the wiring. You need a big space. You need computer. You know, the whole bunch of problems there. Now, the question is, can we solve that with AI? The answer is 100% yes. It's no doubt. It's 100% yes. But we are having a problem here. Now, as you know, AI, they are altogether maybe 4 or 5 big branches. Now, branch 1, that we know very well, is called backpropagation, or you call it large language model. What are they? They are actually the face of AI. They are not really the AI. They are actually the face of AI. That's why it's called large language model. It's a language of, it's that AI that talk. And it's useful because we can go to the whole world has about 15% of the world information is in the internet. The remaining 85% is in the private servers. So you can't search the private servers. The bank won't let you go and search the private servers. You can only search the 15%, but the 15% will give you a lot of information. But that is not what a bank needs. Yeah. That is not what a bank needs. The bank needs you to search their database. Yeah. Now, come back to a square one, garbage in, garbage out. How to search that database using the work of Jeffrey Hinton, Richard Sutton, Yesua Benjo. How are you going to use those work? Now, there are suggestions, right? VLLM, MCP, a federation, a mixture of experts. You know, there are many.
Yeah. So, Mr. Goh, if you can sum up that, and you know, if you can share the screen example that you used earlier, and then we can move on to the next question. Remember, you talk about AI being the screen and not the hardware. So maybe share with the audience quickly, and then we can move on to the next question.
Okay. So AI is basically like a handphone, is the screen. And the screen is very, very important, okay? Without a screen, do you know why we throw in Nokia? Because Nokia doesn't have a screen. So screen is very, very important. In car, we have screen, in handphone, television. Screen is a very important part, but it is not the true AI. Screen is called backpropagation. Mainly it's backpropagation, but it's considered one part of AI, backpropagation. Inside is reinforcement learning, convolution, neural network, artificial neural, deep learning, whatever, machine learning, you name it. In fact, I have a chart, but looking at the ontology, we call that ontology. It means every part of AI. Then you see that the LLM is outside.
Thank you. Mr. Skinner, and I would like to basically pivot to the question about how do you ensure that AI adoption is done in a manner that is actually ethical and follows proper governance and all that. And in your view, how can that be done? And how do you ensure responsible practices globally? And what elements of AI can help to amplify these kind of good outcomes that we're trying to achieve, especially when it comes to ethical finance and Islamic finance?
Thank you. And I know that all the guys will have a lot more to add. One thing that I was thinking about when you mentioned the screen, Mr. Goh, is you've got to realize that AI has killed the browser and it's killed the search engine. So if you're using Chrome or Safari or Google, that's all gone. That's part of this revolution. Going to the responsible, ethical side, I was really interested yesterday, and since I've been here, in how much we talk about green Sukuk and the value-based intermediation investments, and the fact that we should be providing financial inclusion, which are big things for me. In fact, I wrote a book about it called Digital for Good, shameless advert. But the theme of that book was, if you don't stand for something, you fall down. You've got to have a purpose. And the Prime Minister yesterday made that point, that you can't have rampant capitalism. You've got to have a balance with being ethical and moral. And in fact, there's been many instances in the financial markets where we've seen a moral collapse because people have been much more focused on profit than on people. And we were having a debate in the speaker's room before we came on stage around the mix of blockchain and AI. And that was a really interesting theme, because for me, and I know that Sami, you'll probably build on this, blockchain is about provenance, it's about proof, it's about showing that what you invested in went to what you wanted to invest in. So if I give money to a charity, how do I know that my money goes to the end point where it's needed to be delivered? Well, blockchain can prove that that happened. And that's one of the beauties of an immutable smart contract ledger system, that you can track and trace the donor to the end point. AI is a good way of building a generalistic questioning system around that. And the two go hand in hand to a large extent as part of this intelligence revolution that I mentioned, which is what I want to see is we go from the digital structures that we've developed in the last decade to intelligence structures where if I invest in a green Sukuk bond, I know that that's delivered to the agricultural system or whatever it is I wanted it to go to. And I can see a lot of information around that that's delivered through artificial intelligence that augments my knowledge of what I've invested in and why. And that's really where we are moving to.
Thank you. So you talk about, the kind of wish list that you want to have, and I would like to go to Sami in terms of then, what are the key challenges to get to what Mr. Skinner mentioned in terms of the challenge with regard to interoperability, challenge with regard to governance, to, for example, to operationalize smart contracts powered by AI and blockchain, while trying to basically ensure you comply with the Sharia requirements in different jurisdictions.
Yeah, so as we build this AI system, I just want to, from our experience in building it, we just don't want to make the same mistake that we did, for example, in building the Islamic finance ecosystem out. For example, Islamic finance today is 80% Murabaha based. Why? Because it's based on the traditional financial system. And so you have that template. Islamic finance came, and then they're like, okay, we have to abide by the Basel rules, and we have to apply by international accounting standards, et cetera. Let's bootstrap it, and let's do basically what we can. So now we have a situation where yes, you have Islamic finance, it is 5 trillion, but there is, I would say, as yesterday a lot of speakers said, a lack of innovation in terms of, okay, how do you actually do the spirit of Islamic finance using new technology? So in terms of AI, Mr. Goh mentioned, yes, there's principles in Islam, but there's also truths. Right? La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah there's truth in Islam. And yes, there are principles, right? There's a Sharia, the word of our Prophet Muhammad. And then the further away it gets from the source, the more provenance is very important. And then there's the concept of isnad. So there are already, from thousands of years, from 1600 years, these principles of how do you handle data, how do you actually get a muamalat, how do you do ijtihad. There's different principles. So I would, and at least the way that we're doing it is not, okay, let's apply a generalistic AI to Islamic finance processes. It's let's build an AI system that is built from the ground up using these principles. To give you a specific example. So isnad. it is basically a process that has been around from 1600 years, and it maps very well, I would say, to blockchain. Provenance, consensus, forking, all of these things you can map very, very well to that process. In terms of AI, so there are principles that AI can help apply to different situations, and that's what AI is very good at, inference. But there's also, like I mentioned, situations that you need to know where this information came from, provenance. So how do you add provenance? And at the moment, if you ask ChatGPT where it got the information, good luck. You have no idea, it's a black box. So how do you add this provenance, this isnad, to the output of AI? And that's where we combine it with something like blockchain, which you could kind of say is deterministic, immutable. It will never change. It's transparent. It's auditable. And you combine it with something like AI, which is not as rigid, and it can allow us to apply these different standards and different interpretations and different jurisdictions, which is also the heart of Islam, and why Islam has spread around the world so rapidly. So combining, I would say, talking about, let's just dump everything into AI and hopefully something will come out, I agree with Mr. Goh. There's no way that's going to work. But using AI for certain areas of the use case where inference is very important, interpretation is very important, and using blockchain or traditional infrastructure or whatever infrastructure you already have for others, I think that sort of nuance is very important to be able to launch a use case that scales economically.
Thank you, Sami. Dr. Qasim, Sami talked about black box, and normally we refer to AI algorithm as very opaque, and it is a black box. And therefore, how do you ensure compliance to the Sharia principles when companies and institutions adopt AI? Is there a framework that can be put in place that ensures ethical and Sharia-compliant adoption of AI?
Yeah, sure. So this is a long-standing question, and one way you can kind of attack the question is we're talking about the explainability of your model. How explainable is it versus the effectiveness? So going back 5 years ago, or maybe even 3 years ago, when AI models, they weren't that effective. They didn't have the killer use case, which which we see the majority of the world population using AI. In many senses, that big question bothered a lot of people. Like, can you please explain it? We don't fully understand it. It's going into a black box. It's not transparent. It's not understood. Now, recently, with LLMs being so widely used, that question is not as prominent, because if you ask people, they will generally say, yeah, I use AI. Of course, AI works. It's smarter than humans. And so maybe for good or for bad, the question of the transparency, it's kind of gone lower down on the agenda. However, it's still an important question. It's still a very important question. So we've made progress on the effectiveness side. On the explainability side, I don't think we've made as much progress. Now, there is some good news. As we were speaking before the session, the basis of the AI models. What are the basis of the AI models? On the one hand, you have GPUs that do parallel processing. You have the data, and then you have the AI algorithm. These algorithms have been around for a long time, and naturally they've been studied for a long time. So there are tools and techniques that we have in the toolkit to understand this. Another good thing is generally the scientific community is fairly open. I mean, with the massive amounts being pumped into AI now, you are seeing silos appearing, but broadly speaking, academia has always been built on the principle. If you want to become an established researcher, you have to publish, you have to have impact. It's the most important thing in science. What you build must be repeatable. It must be such that someone else can do it as well. And so, you've seen the impact of that. Many people have built foundational models. If you've got deep enough pockets, new entrants have emerged into the market. So I think that's a good, to me, that's very good news. You guys as the regulators and central banks, again, playing an important role. So, for example, from Singapore, the MAS has released guidelines, the FEET principles. In Europe, we have the EU AI Act. So, I think all of these elements together are going to be quite crucial to addressing the question. And I think Sami mentioned on the Sharia aspect as well. It definitely needs to be, we shouldn't forget that question. That's a very important question. Let's not forget it.
So thank you. So in Malaysia, we issued a discussion paper on AI in August this year, and we welcome feedback from all of you to comment on that discussion paper, so that we can make an informed decision in terms of how to move forward with regard to whether to have certain kind of regulation or not on the adoption of AI for the financial sector. Now, moving to Mr. Goh, can AI completely replace human decision making, or it will just be a tool that augment our decisions?
I want to address the issue of responsibility, because this is a very important word in banking. Now, in fact, the word responsibility, when I listen to people discuss, is actually very conventional. They come from conventional banking view. Now, but the word responsibility, I've forgotten the Arabic word for it, is actually long ago embedded in Islamic banking. Whether it's mutarabah, musyarakat, they are actually responsible processes to the muamalat. Yesterday night I was going through about 16 of them. These are guiding principles of how you build the processes. So they are not a product, they are the guiding principles, they are the responsible way of doing banking. Now, so what has AI introduced? It's called hallucination. It's called intelligent guessing. Terence Tao, one of the greatest mathematicians, he said AI, this LLM is just intelligent guessing. Okay, so now the problem with intelligent guessing is there are unintended consequences. So it's a completely different story. Unintended consequences is not a responsibility issue. The responsibility issue, if you think from conventional way, it will take a long time to even talk. But if you think from Islamic way, it's easy, because that has been discussed thousands of years. We don't need to discuss here, because we have brightest people like now. So we talk about, I want to talk about truth of Islam. Now, 1992, actually, I got this from a friend from Harvard, that written by Al-Faruqi. I don't know whether any one of you know, this is one of the greatest Islamic scholars, Al-Faruqi. He wrote a book called Al-Tawhid. I think all of you know the only truth and the only God, right? So it is actually, Islam has evolved. We call it reinforcement in AI. It has been reinforced and reinforced thousands of years. Those questions, actually, frankly, there are so many thousands of scholars that has gone through it, that today, if we sit here 15 minutes trying to be brighter than them, then we are stupid, okay? Right? So now so we are left with only one problem. That's called hallucination or intelligent guessing. Now, what do? There are many methods that people are proposing. There are many methods. And one of them is called controller. I think I cannot dwell into it. I just went to Taiwan, talked to a controller manufacturer. I discussed all day with them of how to do that controlling mechanism. I think it is not the right place to delve into it, but obviously, between AI problems and responsibility, you can actually control it. Okay, I mean that is obvious, very obvious, and you can be programmed into a controller.
Thank you. Thank you. Going back to Mr. Skinner, and well, you know, we talk about some of the key risks. So I guess the question that I have is actually, what are the safeguards that we have to make sure that, at least from the ethical finance point of view, that, you know, the broader interest of the public is, you know, protected. Where do you see the role of regulators in this? Any advice to people like me in terms of what I should do with regard to, you know, helping the industry move forward in adoption of AI, and yet making sure that the interest of the consumers, the ecosystem is very much protected?
Well, I think there's a number of interesting points being raised around regulating the system. And at the moment, most regulators, Bank Negara, are following the path. And that's what regulators do. They don't predict the future. They watch what's happening and then try and work out what to do about it after things have happened. And that kind of is okay, but it's also pretty dangerous in that we've seen quite a few predicaments in the markets. You know, for example, P2P lending in China, where the markets went rampant and then the regulator caught up and the whole thing collapsed and people lost a lot of money. With AI, I think, and it goes to the point I was making around companies, companies are finding it very hard to keep up with the pace of technological change. And the issue, in particular with most financial companies that I deal with, not fintechs, but traditional companies, is they don't have technologists leading the company. I don't mean the CEO has to be a technologist, although that would be useful, but the executive leadership team definitely has to have a very strong technological leadership. And most banks don't have that. On the converse, fintechs have that, but they don't have the financial expertise. You know, because my favorite quote is from Jamie Dimon, which is when in 2008 they had the financial collapse in America and Europe. They call it global. It wasn't global. It was Europe and America. And his daughter said, "What's a financial collapse?" And he said, "Oh, something that happens about every 7 years." So, you know, when you know what's going on in finance, then you can take the risk out of the system. If you only understand technology, you bring innovation and you bring risk into the system. And so whether you're a regulator or a financial company, you've got to find the balance between risk and change, innovation. And I think a lot of people are very bad at managing that because they don't have the balance of the innovators who understand the technologies and the financial system. And to a point that I know Sami will pick up upon, is that when I walk into an executive leadership workshop with the bank, and I do quite a lot of them, I often ask two questions. First, what's the difference between machine learning and artificial intelligence? And second, what's the difference between blockchain and distributed ledger technology? And I get a blank look from everyone in the room, like, what the hell are you asking me that for, Chris? And then I go, I'm asking you that because if you don't understand the differences in these technologies and where they're taking your institution, why are you in this room? Because you cannot lead this institution if you don't understand the differences.
Thank you. I think that's quite enlightening. Sami, so as AI continue to evolve, how do you see AI reshaping the roles of key players in the Islamic financial institutions such as the Sharia scholars, risk managers, and product developers? And is there an opportunity for wider collaboration?
Yeah. So absolutely. Maybe I'll take the example of our company. So when AI came, basically everybody in our company got promoted. Because before they were actually doing the task. Then AI came in, and then they were actually overlooking the AI that's doing the task. And then now we're at a stage where actually we have our employees managing the workflows. So in our product development of an Islamic product, I can give you an example of this specific Mudaraba product that we are developing, where a financial institution deploys capital so that it gets to the smallholder farmers, and you can measure the impact, and you can measure actually where the money is going, and the profit is split according to the Mudaraba contract. So in that specific product, we engage with Sharia advisors from day one. So day one, Sharia advisors, day one, law firm, day one, the livestock service provider on the ground, day one, the financial institution, right? So this is not after the fact, hey, we have this product, can you put it in your pipeline? No, it's actually day one, because what does an AI product require? AI product requires us to encode the workflows. So we need to know how the Sharia advisory firm is going to engage throughout the Mudaraba contract. Where do you need to hand it off to the Sharia advisors? Where do they come in? Where do they audit? The legal, okay, when there's a customer dispute, then the law firm needs to be, the AI needs to hand it off to the law firm. Then the livestock service provider, what is the requirement of the livestock service provider? They need to provide information about where they spent the money. They need to upload the bank statements. They need to do all of these different things. And then the financial institution, right? They have stakeholders. So all of these things first need to be gathered from the various stakeholders and then embedded into the product so that the AI can hand off to the humans. So it's not replacing humans at all, actually. I would say it's actually elevating humans to a level where they can actually just approve and oversee that everything is going right and not.
Thank you. So I guess a follow-up to that question to Dr. Qasim, then how would you approach the challenges of embedding Sharia principles in the OI algorithm? Now, Dr. Sami talked about the co-creation approach, if I may call it. In day-to-day work, how would you translate that into day-to-day activities? And do you need a separate framework for AI in Islamic finance, or it is one of the same, similar to what we have in conventional finance?
Yeah, I think it's an open question, and I think yeah, different people are taking different approaches. I think maybe if I was to categorize them, starting at the top, you have the foundational models, which you can localize to language, religion. So for example, in Singapore, we have the sea lion. You were mentioning the one in Qatar and Malaysia also. So that's definitely one approach. The issue perhaps is that that's quite expensive. You need a lot of capital to do that. You know, you need a lot of GPUs. For that approach, the incumbents, they do need to work together with the government, with the big institutions. After that, I think the current providers, the current big cloud providers, they do offer services to kind of fine-tune the models. But then you have other risks, like vendor risks. The models may change. You don't have full control. It's effectively tagging on to, for example, the Anthropic model, the OpenAI model, the Gemini versions of models. So again, this comes with a lot of issues from that regard. What some people are doing very quickly, you know, you can instruct the AI writing your prompt, so you can do some prompt engineering. But you know, that's a risky strategy, as we've discussed. The LLM, you know, can hallucinate, and so this is an issue. We're seeing other things integrating. So a lot of the interesting work is being done with agents. So the idea is that one LLM can effectively call upon tools. MCP is becoming the new API, is becoming very popular, where effectively the LLM can, you know, rely on other tools. They can integrate it with things like blockchain technology. So I think there's different ways of doing it, and I wouldn't say I have the answer right now. In terms of your question about, from the regulation side, I do think that, as I mentioned before, the regulator and government has an important role. I think especially in Islamic finance, and I think obviously there is one approach that, okay, we'll let the industry kind of figure it out and we'll take a light touch approach. I think in Islamic finance, having the involvement and having that consensus, I think would be a value add. So I would say from a conventional perspective, that would be a source of difference.
Thank you.
If I may just, quickly add one thing on the foundational model side. I know, so there's, of course, OpenAI, and there's Anthropic, and there's a few other foundational models, but I just want to call out that, and we mentioned, in the waiting room as well, there's, in Qatar, for example, there's Fanar, which is a large language model trained on Arabic corpus. So it's their own, large, and then we cross-check. So whatever we get from ChatGPT or OpenAI, Anthropic, we cross-check with Fanar, and we have found that actually the depth that we get for interpretation or for fiqh or these things is much deeper from Arabic corpus. Yes, because there is Western biases in the large language model. And you mentioned, of course, Malaysia has the large language model as well. So just want to address that there definitely is an impact of the type of data, like, junk in, junk out, like the data, the corpus makes a big difference, language and interpretation-wise. So maybe you can touch upon
Thank
that.
you. Fair point. Mr.
I've
Skinner?
just got one question which Mr. Go might answer a bit. I know that the other guys will have some views. But if you are using a foundational model with Sharia principles, and then in the ecosystem, the delivery of the financial product breaks the principles because of something in the ecosystem not conforming, who's accountable?
Okay. Yeah. So the foundational model, in this case, let's take, for example, if you use OpenAI, their foundational model, and then we put a Mudaraba contract using the foundational model, then if something goes wrong, is it us or is it OpenAI? In this case, it'll be us, right? Because OpenAI provides essentially a mathematical formula that predicts the future. They don't say they predict it in the right way, right? We create the framework that basically guides this mathematical formula to provide our outcome, the outcome that we want for our own use case. So there's the large language model, which is just basically a prediction mechanism. And then if you use that large language model to create your own product geared to, let's say, Islamic banks to do a certain thing, then where's the liability? I would say it depends on the contract you have with a bank, right? If you're providing that service, then, so, it's, if something goes wrong on the internet, is it the internet's fault? Well, not really, it's probably the websites, right? So, there's, of course, these nuances, but, you have the foundation models, and then you can build on top of it, right? So how much you can actually tailor that formula for your own use case, I think the closer you get to the customer, basically the responsibility becomes sort of closer to
Thanks. And I think from the regulatory point of view, the responsibility always lies with the person that we license or approved. Okay.
Well, when we look at a responsibility, there are many partitions that we have to look at. And now, I think we are now talking about technology. And so I'm going to look from technology point of view and not into other aspects of human actions or human relations. Now, when you look at technology, actually first, there are technologies that are global. So you call it computing, you call it CPU, you call it GPU. These are the global technology that are needed in order to do the vertical and the horizontal. Now, so you talk about distributed database, as Skinner pointed out, then you improve it a bit with a few more layers. You call it blockchain. You add in a few more layers. You call it Bitcoin. Then Chinese take out some, put put in some more. It's called CNBC. And now, what is the status now? It's called federated learning, right? So it's a distributed learning and blockchain, you name it, is all in there. Now, so as you know, this is called reinforcement learning. It improves over the years. It improves over the years, so there is no particular status. If we come back 5 years later, you find that we're going to add a few more years into it. So that's part one. That is the so-called horizontal technology. Now, if there are mistakes mixed by the technology, I think we are very confused. Whose responsibility is that? Now, it's going to be a long story because we have to track. Now, but there are technical, there are vertical part of technology. The vertical part of technology is basically what we call use cases, we call it application, you call it whatever names you want to have. Now, if you organize it badly and problems happen, okay? Actually, you don't even know problems happen because people organize it badly. It's called garbage in, garbage out, but you don't know who is responsible. Now, this is called technology garbage, okay? It's another problem, right?
Okay.
So it's not as simple as you can pinpoint to a person.
Thanks. Do we have questions from audience? Can we get the microphone to the gentleman? I'm mindful of time, so I would like to open up to the floor for questions. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I get your question and then I'll read from the Slido after that. So you have the privilege of asking one question from the floor.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Abdurrahman Safi, a PhD researcher in Islamic finance from IIUM. Mr. Go has pointed out a very good points, which has the principles of the principle in pathways. As we have a verse in the Quran that Allah will create things that we may know not in the future. So these are the tools that we are using for our services in the world. So what makes Islamic finance follow these all tools while we have the principles in pathways in the real world? So we do have these principles. What makes us back? Why we are not in the front? Is it the political tensions or it's lack of human capital? So I would like to have the answer from you, Go. Thank you so much.
Well, now everything is evolving, so we go back to Islamic banking, and like I said, Islamic banking is much earlier than conventional banking, right? So now, actually, Islamic banking is responsibility based. So yesterday, I was going through all the products. I mean, guiding processes. Now they are not the muamalat, but guiding processes like mudarabah, musharaka, jara, and so on. There are about 16, 17 of them, right? So now, the evolution of Islam. Now, I believe you have heard of this word kafala, right? Right. So it's the same principle. Now, if you ask Professor Richard Sutton, who actually wrote this paper called Reinforcement Learning in 1989. That was long ago, yes, 1989. That was published in 1989, yeah, 1989. And it's called reinforcement learning. Now, if you go back and sit down and think about Islam, it's actually 1,000 over years of reinforcement. And that key word is called falah, I believe. And maybe you can teach me. I'm not expert. I really, really want to learn, in that reinforcement learning, what is the key term? In AMI, which is Richard Sutton's institution, they call it goal. They call it reward. Goal reward, okay? So I believe Islam is very guided by goal reward. And I believe the key word is falah, and so it's not a temporary status that I can make comment and I shouldn't make comment, because in any evolution, Of course, human beings are not perfect, right? You want to make command, you can make any command, right? It's meaningless, completely meaningless. But to recognize the whole history of evolution, the state of affair. Now, in reinforcement learning, the most important is the state of affair. So that then state 1 can go to state 2, state 2 can go to state 3, state 3 can go to state 4. But how you guide it is called, in Islam it's called falah, but it's in reinforcement learning it's called go reward.
Thank you. Yeah.
Very similar.
So I'm going to use that and expand from that on this particular question. As AI evolves fast, are Sharia governance and fatwa processes agile enough to keep pace, or is there a growing gap with tech and Islamic legal oversight? Sami, maybe? Yeah.
So this is a good question. I think, so in Islamic finance, you need, for each deal, you need a specific Islamic finance contract that has a explicit fatwa. And if you change a word, then basically you need a renewed fatwa. So there's basically the concept of, let's use this template for everything is not as easy to do. It probably also relates to your question because, you know, it's very specific. It's context dependent. It's very high context. I think personally that we are at the juncture where you have a changing world order, you have actually a very young population, we have the Middle East actually, you know, rising finally, and you have technology, you know, AI, blockchain, etc., that would make the existing processes that are in place for a reason that Mr. Goh mentioned for a long time, right? They have stood the test of time. So I don't think there's an issue in how the fatwa process is done today. Using AI, we can actually, for example, I'll give you a specific example. We take an existing paper Islamic finance contract that has gotten a legal and fatwa, and then create a smart contract based on that. So this doesn't change. But by doing that, what you're doing is actually you're enabling real-time audits. The application of that paper contract is being done, is automated, not actually the entire process before, which is very important, right? That process is at the heart of it, right? That is, you need human beings to actually judge context-based contracts. So I actually think this is a golden time, and we should all actually embrace the technology.
Thanks. Now, I think the most popular question that we have here is actually on the fact that AI brings efficiency, but raises ESG risk, privacy, energy use, bias. So I guess then the question is, how can we align this with the objective of Sharia, which is social justice, ethics, and stewardship? Is there a conflict that needs to be reconciled? Anyone?
I think we are always negative about progresses. When we look at television, we say television is bad. And I still remember my father, mother say, watch television is bad. And handphone now bad. Now my grandson uses handphone, must come to my house because Gong Gong always allows him to use, but the father, mother won't allow him to use. So now we are coming to AI. AI is a problem, this and of course, everything is a state. Like I said, it's a state. You want to look at negative, always you can find a whole bunch of negative because why? We are human. I mean, as long as you're human, you err. And then you err, you talk about your possibility of erring. You can give 1,000 books on how you, unintended consequences, a whole bunch of other things. Now, but our responsibility is to have a very clear mind, extremely clear mind about what is AI. So you have to divide AI into reinforcement learning and backpropagation. Don't call it LLM alone. LLM involves a backpropagation, machine learning, and deep learning. There are many components in it. In fact, I have an ontology of that. Unfortunately, couldn't show. So when you look at so-called responsibility, it's either or ethical or non-ethical. It's either intended or unintended. Now, we as human beings, we will forever face unintended consequences, but we try to reduce them. That is our responsibility. That is the job of technologies. Now, people like me, I have to be responsible for trying to reduce the unintended consequences. Now, the use of that end product, honestly, can you prevent people from cheating? Well, it's beyond technology. It's actually the problem of government, it's a problem of lawyers, it's a problem of police, it's a problem of many other people. You cannot just expect AI to do all the things.
Thanks. Mr. Skinner, any thoughts?
I was only going to say that the most important word in this question is stewardship. And the fact is that we've got layers and layers of development and progress over the centuries, and we always need to have good stewardship, or governance, if you prefer, as an alternative word. And so right now, I see an awful lot of green tech, an awful lot of agri-tech that's starting to develop the ESG areas to balance the technology developments with the environment and climate change. And that really comes down to going back to Bank Negara and the Prime Minister. Stewardship.
Thank you. Sami, anything on this?
Yeah, I mean, don't dump everything in AI, right? AI is good at certain things. Just, use a whole sort of different, I would say, combination of technologies. And another thing actually relates to what you asked, in terms of recommendation for regulators. As a startup operating in many different jurisdictions, I would say you just have to try it out. Like, at the end of the day, it's a probabilistic thing. People are still trying to figure it out. So, many countries have sandboxes, right? Bahrain, for example, has an API sandbox. I mean, that's brilliant because it allows a startup to actually connect directly to vetted financial institution APIs. How difficult is for a startup to actually access banking APIs in the normal world, right? Qatar has a different view, but at the end of the day, to actually provide an environment, and I would say matching, right? So that, okay, you match with CIMB, with Maybank, with these institutions to actually develop these best practices. Because nothing is done in a vacuum. Like, at the end of the day, you have to apply this technology to the real world, and then the problems will surface, then you can address it.
Thank you. So we have to wrap up, but I'm going to allow one question to everyone. If you have to choose one AI initiative that could transform Islamic finance or transform the conventional finance to be more ethical, what would that one AI initiative, and I'm going to do that in reverse order, maybe in 5 words or less for each panelist.
Okay, I spent 37 years working on the data model, and I have emphasized model is extremely important. Now, went to the pathway, which is very important. Now, coming to the next is AI. Now, AI, of course, there are
5 words. 5 words.
Horizontal and vertical technologies. Now, I'm focusing on the horizontal, and I'm organizing scientists, professors, industrial providers. So we just met in the Silicon Valley of Taiwan, and we have a whole day discussion on that. And that is what I'm full-heartedly doing with, as my role of AI Malaysia chairman. Now, it's the same job for society, for Silverlake, for banking, for AI Malaysia.
So stewardship in short. Dr. Qasim.
Yeah, I think one thing, investing in talent, Mr. Go and like you guys at the bank. So I think investing in talent would be the.
Sami?
Islamic finance ontology means define the terms, and then AI will be able to understand.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mr. Skinner.
Yeah, my best example is integrating different techs, particularly agri-tech and fintech, bank tech. And the best example is a few banks I've worked with are working with farmers in the fields. The fields are being monitored by nanotechnologies and the structures of how they water the fields. That feeds into an AI system that goes to the bank and to the insurance company, and that can predict whether the crops will be thriving or dead.
All right, thank you. And thank you, gentlemen. That's the end of our session. And please join me to show our appreciation to our panelists. Thank you. Back to the MC.
Thank you very much, Haji, and also our panelists. Gentlemen, please step forward for a group photo.